my name is Sophia. We've got 40 attendees so far, so I'm going to start. I'm the Director of Training Development at Philanthropy Impact and your moderator for today's chat. I want to say a quick welcome to the third of our Walk in My Shoes web series, where we'll be discussing the role of technology in response to COVID-19. Today, we've invited people from our wider network to take part, so I'm just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce Philanthropy Impact. We are a membership, not-for-profit organisation whose overarching vision is to increase and improve philanthropy and social investment. We work with advisors to the ultra-high net worth and high net worth individuals to grow and enhance the quality of the support they give to their clients around philanthropy and social investment. With the support and impact of our far-reaching and incredible network, we act as a knowledge hub and centre of excellence, offering events, specialist knowledge sharing, training, voluntary standards and sector and government liaison. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have set up this series of chats to connect with our members whilst we're unable to hold our popular events, but also to provide support during a time when our professional and personal lives are colliding. We are not clear on what the future holds, and so philanthropy and social investment is more important than ever. We want to create a space of ideas sharing, collaboration and solidarity for our members and wider network. So please, no pitching. Use the chat function to ask questions and we will read them out. If you're unable to get your question answered today, we will try to answer it offline. And these questions may help us shape an upcoming topic, so please don't hold back. Use the chat as much as you can. I want to say a very big thank you to our speakers today, who are all bringing a unique perspective to the discussion. And so that leads me to introduce our board member and chair for today, Darshita Gillies. Is that right? Sorry. From tech firm Maanch. Over to you, Darshita.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, everyone. A warm, sunny, although we are all indoors, a sunny day for us to be on this call. Before I go into the discussion and have insights from an amazing panel that we have, I just wanted to share with you all just a personal reflection that I have this morning, which is around how technology has really brought us closer in so many ways in the last few weeks than it had ever before. And I feel like this is a moment in time where we will look back and say, this is how we re-engineered technology to how we re-engineered technology to be centered around human connection. And I think it's that possibility that sparks me to invite our panelists here to share some anecdotes and insights from their experiences. I'd like to first call upon Elisabetta. Elisabetta, and Elisabetta is can you all hear me? I'm just getting this side chat that.
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Fantastic. Okay, Elisabetta Osta, we have you. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you here. And I love the name of your organization, Collaborative Technology, and the Collaborative Technology Initiative. And I would love for you to share what are your insights on how philanthropy sector as a whole can benefit from what emerging technologies have to offer.
Well, thank you so much, Darshita. Elisabetta Osta, a pleasure to be with you today. I'm leading the Collaborative Technology Initiative, which is really aimed at looking at how digital and data can support the vulnerable, and also how digital and data, what is the work that we need to do to remove the barriers for the digital divide, because we'll see a bit more about that. As we are all here today, we see that our lives during this pandemic would not have been possible without a digital backbone. So we are starting to appreciate what digital transformation is and what it can bring to our life, and also how important it is. There was a meme on LinkedIn just a couple of days back saying, who has been leading your digital transformation, your CEO, your CTO, or COVID-19? And we can all see that there has been a rush to digitize and embrace the online world, because that made it possible to go through in sort of this crisis. And just imagine what would have been 100 years ago during the Spanish flu. There wasn't this infrastructure, there wasn't that digital backbone. So I'm sure that people were not able to react so quickly as we have been through. So this will also give us an opportunity to learn at an unprecedented scale what digital transformation can do. But also, I think the digital divide will become more apparent. And I'll sort of touch upon that sort of a bit later. But if you think that there's still, even in the UK, 10% of the population that doesn't have access to either the devices or data. And also, if you think on how schools have been able to ramp up digital capabilities, there's been a huge divide. So that's really where philanthropy can support to ensure that the most vulnerable in the population are not left behind. And at the same time, we start to focus on the importance of building this, if you wish, is a bit infrastructure, but making sure that this digital transformation backbone is accessible to everyone and everyone can benefit from it.
Thank you, Elisabetta. And in times like this, where are you seeing are the biggest challenges we are facing as a society, and where specifically you think that technology can really enable us?
Yeah, so I was sort of giving the example of schools, for instance. So, so I think it's everywhere. So you will see that digital transformation is important everywhere. So maybe I will just focus on two elements. So one is schools and what's happening in EdTech for anyone who's got kids. And perhaps, what is also the importance in the third sector. But let's start with schools. So I just would like to remind us that there was a survey just last week among teachers done by Teachers App. So there was a survey among 6,700 teachers, and it highlighted there was a huge difference in how schools were able to organize themselves and how quickly they were able to respond. So for instance, 28% of private schools were able to, sort of share online videos, have online chatting, but only 2% of state schools were able to do so. So we start to see that even in the kind of ramping up and sort of the adoption of digital transformation, those who had already started that journey were better prepared to be able to respond, and those who hadn't, obviously it's much harder to do so. Then I explained, for instance, how sort of not everyone in the population has got access, and still in the UK we still have a number of people who don't have access to the digital, either because they don't have data, either because they don't have the right devices, etc. So if you see this is a clear example of digital divide. And that's really where philanthropy can come in and can support and making sure that the most vulnerable are not left behind, and there is enough capital to bring the right infrastructure across.
Thank you, Elisabetta. Sorry, was there a question, John?
I had a quick question, which was, what was the percentage of private schools as opposed to the percentage of state schools? Did you say 30?
So I have some data from Teacher Tap, which I can sort of share with you later. And sort of within that, first of all, it's 6,700 teachers. So, obviously it's whoever answered on the day. So we don't know how quite, how representative it is or not. But we had 28%, according to that survey, 28% of private schools on the 26th of March that had online video conferencing with their students. So in that particular day, there were activities taking place in online video conferences versus 2% of state schools. Then there were other questions whether teachers were able to chat online to their students and see how they were and follow them. And that's, again, was a 26 versus 6%. Anyway, so there was almost like a pulse check on a particular day in terms of how much sort of schools were using digital technology to keep up with their students. And clearly there was quite striking differences.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Sebastian, and thank you, Elisabetta, for your contribution. I'm going to invite David Bell to share insights from his experience. Just one word or a few words about David Bell. David Bell is the founder of PCD Club, and they work with philanthropists and private wealth clients on various aspects around wealth and philanthropy management. So, David, how are you experiencing these times, and especially when I think of dining club, I always think of people sitting around a table having face-to-face interaction. What does that look like for you now, and what are you seeing in terms of what future is like when it how will the future be reshaped based on what is occurring now? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, we're predominantly a networking group for private wealth advisors, so take into account a lot of private banks, law firms, internationally mobile advisors, and our networking events brought those together. In 2019, we organised events in 18 different cities. We had a big program planned for this year of face-to-face networking. That has been curtailed by COVID-19, and we're responding by moving PCD online. So we're looking at full use of all the webinar technology and different platforms and groups. And I think that a lot of our members are from traditional conservative industries like private banks and law firms that didn't embrace the technology that was already there and in place, simply because they preferred the face-to-face. And if there was any kind of barrier towards doing a webinar, like a firewall or something like that, 6 months ago they would have just said, I'm not even bothering. But today, if that is their only method of communication, they fix it, they work it out. And so I think, like you're saying, your opening comments, it's going to fundamentally change the workplace. If people are sat at home in their home study, they want to connect with others, they want to learn, they still want to be plugged in. And I think that we're going to make great strides coming out of this crisis on all of the communications, both platforms like this and also, the WhatsApp and the different groups that are out there that are being used, but are being just like turned up. So yeah, it's an exciting time. We've pivoted around a lot of what we do, and we see digital now as like the major channel and opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. And in terms of your interactions with your stakeholders, what are the common sort of opportunities and challenges that you're hearing?
I think people do feel isolated. They want to share, best practice with each other. So we're trying to create forums for people to share knowledge. I mean, a contact in Singapore reached out to me a month or so ago to say, could PCD just gather and replay information about the workplace in the sector and how people are adopting different ideas. So at the moment, we're doing a big survey to our members about that. That's not traditionally an area we did anything on, but we have adopted it because people are asking for it. So I think that, yeah, it's to overcome that isolation, but also all of our customers are professionals. They deal with high net worth clients who ultimately, life goes on, they still need things in other locations, or they need advice on their estate planning or philanthropy or whatever it is. And advisors have to find their counterpart to help deliver that service. So we're finding increased interest in our LinkedIn, the content we're producing, the webinars, and all of that I think was just a little bit lower in previous times when people relied on face-to-face. So we're seeing it as an opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. There is a question from the audience. Before I take that, I have one more question for you, which is in terms of the connections and conversations you've had so far with the wealth advisors.
Yeah.
How is their relationship changing in reality, and also likely potentially for future with how they interact with their clients?
With clients, I think they're more likely to have reached out to have a video conversation with a client. I don't think previously a private banker or a lawyer ever had a video conference call with a client, but maybe they did in like extreme remote circumstances, whereas now I think that's commonly offered to create the connectivity. So that has changed for sure. Just more communication, I think. In these crises, there's more regular communication. But that method of communication, professional firms will adopt video, I think, in a way that previously they didn't, that being the major shift. Should I take that question?
Yes,
on the slide?
yes, please. Thank you, David.
So that our program has changed fundamentally. We had events mapped out all around the world, in Hong Kong, Singapore, New York, Miami, and all of those events now have got a question mark against them, basically. So we're looking to reschedule events into 2021 when we think demand for events might come back up. But we're fully investing in this webinar kind of platform and ethos and technology so that we can still deliver value. So yeah, we've had to change fundamentally, but I think that's what happens in these crises. The technology is there, the platforms are there for people to still connect. So we're just trying to, but you can learn ways of doing it better, I think. People's traditional perception of webinars is not great. So it's undoing a lot of that negativity and providing a better product, I think, is the thing.
Thank you. And I have one more question for you from Patrick. How can advisors virtually develop networks and create new business?
So, I mean, what we're doing is a lot of our advisors are internationally based, but interested in connecting with each other. So we're creating regional forums that unify those advisors, whether they're based, say, in the Middle East or China or North America. And we're creating content around which they can gather and network, and also give them the means to connect together after the event. So give them a guest list, you know, recreate as much of the live event as you can. And make sure the channels of communication are wide open for people to connect around the event, produce some interesting content and share it. And so we're still learning, but I think there's no reason why after a webinar, people can't connect, set up one-to-ones and just explore the business that's there. And then when travel conditions ease, they can go back to meet those people, but at least they haven't spent time idly just waiting for the travel ban to lift. You know, they've done their best to connect and communicate.
Thank you. And you have one more question on what do you think are the negative ideas of webinars? I
mean, the classic webinar format is to have a load of dense, boring slides and a monotone robotic voice underneath it, and to do that for an hour. And that is what people think of often when they think of a webinar. They don't think of something engaging, something visual, something well thought out. So what I mean is that the webinar has been a poor relation product. It hasn't been a Premier League product. So there's loads of scope to make that so much better.
Thank you. I agree with that. Also, there are some really fascinating tools that have always been there called the Mentimeter. I don't know if people know, but these are collaborative technologies that enable us to do polls, opinions, wordles on these digital platforms, and they can just provide a collective insight on how things are. I think more questions will continue. I would love for us to draw spotlight on Sebastian and his work. Thank you, David. That was really insightful. Sebastian, it's a pleasure to have you join us. Thank you. And before we go into sort of technology and COVID, I am personally, but I'm sure many of us are, curious to hear your journey from being a designer to being an inventor, and how you think these emerging technologies, especially on AI, robotics, and 3D, can shape a different future for us.
Well, firstly, on my journey to being a designer to inventor, as a child, I always wanted to be an inventor, and actually, I wanted to go to study engineering at Bristol, but I studied industrial design engineering at Central St Martin's, and everything, I guess, that I do has got to be made, so it's form follows fabrication. Unless you've got a very, very good idea about how things could be made, you can fall into traps. So if you really understand how something is going to be made, the technology of manufacture, the technology of materials, you can design out failure, and you can design out cost, and you can design in user experience. So I see my role as transforming technology into user experience, as it were. You know, the legacy, you know, design is a legacy of thought, and the legacy of design is a thought as well. It's a perception by the user. So what I have done now is some time ago I was made a design in residence of University of Sheffield, and teamed up with the head of robotics there, a guy called Professor Tony Prescott, and we worked on designing a robotic companion robot called Miro. The thought behind it is that most robotic platforms are unattractive, or people can get wary of them and frightened by them. So we took a sophisticated robotic platform and put it in the shell of an emotionally engaging shell, on the basis that if it looks like a pet, people's expectations for a small domestic animal are pretty low, and we can exceed, or not exactly exceed, but we can develop a robot that behaves like a small domestic animal, and if you treat it like a small domestic animal, it will react in more or less the same way. So you don't need an instruction book to learn how to read it. So in a situation of isolation that we're in at the moment, not only do you have a companion robot that's emotionally engaging, but it's also aware of your state of mind through recognizing your tone of voice, and it can recognize your facial recognition, whether you're happy or sad and things like that, your gait and things like that. And if you have an accident, or if you have a fall, it can ring for help, which is more than most cats and dogs can do. So I think that's the basic principle behind it. So originally we started making it as a research tool for universities, and so our alpha range was specifically for use in universities like Bristol and Sheffield, and then we produced a beta developer kit that we launched a couple of years ago, which has been selling to universities around the world. And then this year we've produced something called the Miro E, which is an education version of Miro, which comes with something called Miro Cloud, which is an education interface. And we've had children as young as 5 doing some very basic programming. But so it can go, so the bandwidth is between, say, a 5-year-old and a, postdoctorate student. It depends what the software you're using. If you're using our very basic Miro Cloud in Blockly mode, or whether you're using it in a Python mode, which is a programming language. The point is that, kids need to learn to code, and because it's not, it's not that they're expected to code, but they need to understand how to code. And what's really important is that people with creative mindsets have an understanding of what the tools of coding can do for them. So from a 5-year-old child's point of view, or a primary school child, they are teaching their classroom pet to do tricks or whatever. In the same way as the teacher is programming secondary school children to pass exams. I mean, it's a semantic thing. You only need one of these per class, because on the interface, which is a cloud-based interface, so however crude your computer is, so long as you can get onto a browser, you've got the power of Amazon Web Services behind you, and you've got a very powerful computer behind that to do some coding. And then there's a avatar Miro at the side of the thing. So once you've done your coding, you can see what it will do on a physical robot. Now, the benefit of this is that coding is usually, at schools, quite an abstract activity. And I think there was one statistic that caught my attention, which was that the whole of the Facebook ecosphere a couple of years ago was 64 million lines of code. And the latest Mercedes-Benz E-Class was 100 million lines of code just in one product. And then you think how, you know, in this new ecosphere that we're talking about, the digital technologies and this, you know, it's one thing to use a people who are just carrying out activity, but if you want people, you'll get great coding from great coders, and you know, everyone who's got a Nobel Prize has been an imaginative and creative person, and we need to attract imaginative and creative people into coding and not think it's just a geeky thing. Oh, it's spotty boys or whatever. It needs some people with different mindsets to get the best out of the opportunities.
Thank you, Sebastian. I find what you've just summarized there really fascinating, because this is a full loop design of technology, engaging young people all the way through to using technology or creating technology that enables better life for elderly care as well, in not just in our country, but globally. And I think that's one thing about technology, is that it's not restricted to a geographic area. It's there for access to all of humanity, which is great. John, I'm conscious of time. We have 3 minutes left. Is there any questions that you would like to ask the panel?
Well, just very quickly, obviously this is going to be highly disruptive for professional advisors, but does it also mean, though, that it will actually help to increase giving using technology, that advisors can provide support to their clients through their donor journey, but at the same time, technology can be developed that makes it easier for the advisors to connect their clients to specific projects? Because right now we have a whole range of activities taking place, but we also have the stress of charities and many of them potentially having to close. So it'd be really good if we could get in 2 minutes a response from the panel about how this is going to actually help, because I know, Darcy, you're doing some really interesting stuff about making those connections. Marcel Speller's doing it from another direction. So it'd be really interesting to hear from the panel about how we can get more giving and better giving.
Maybe I will start. So charities need digital transformation, but every single charity probably will not be in a position to have the backbone that they need to do that. So I think it would be great to start to see maybe sort of partnerships of different philanthropic programs to build backbones that can be multi-tenant, so they can be leveraged by different third sector service providers to the vulnerable. So I think moving outside the crisis, this will become even more important. But and that's really where we need the philanthropists and the advisors play a really crucial role to bring attention of the philanthropists to that need of infrastructure. And I think that attention is not been there, but advisors can play a really important role.
Thank you.
I think one important aspect is that the crisis is impacting everyone, whether you're Tom Hanks or you're a famous sports star. You're not immune from this virus. So that brings everyone into the scope of it, and it's going to highlight a number of things. People's inequality, whether they have gardens and space and land, or whether they're in a tower block, is material in this environment when we're all locked down. But also, it's going to highlight, the impetus on donations to good causes that help support health in the community. So I think it'll highlight the need for people to think about their duty and obligation to help others in need.
Great, thank you.
I think there's going to be a sort of post-COVID change of criteria and priorities, which is going to be quite dramatic. And I find it hard to predict. We can think of some things, but if I just think of the Grenfell Tower fire, how just one incident has changed the whole way the buildings are made. And for one of the companies I'm a director of is an architecture company, and their insurance rates have gone through the roof. And so it's issues like that, the knock-on effects that we're not expecting. And, you know, this comes nicely timed just as 5G is being rolled out. And I think maybe that the 5G will have even more impact than we thought it would be because of the nature of what it's able to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you everyone for your questions, and thank you everyone for participating and listening and engaging with your questions. Sophia, over to you to close.
Thanks, Darshi, and thanks everybody for your input today. That was really great interaction from the chat, so thank you. And I'm really aware that there was a lot more we could continue to talk about, so just want to say thank you very much. And if you have any other topics, please get in touch. And see you next Monday. Well, next Tuesday, because it's Easter next Monday. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great Easter. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.